Hello everybody. We've got a nice intimate audience here. I hope you've had a lovely day at VegFest Trade, because this is the UK's first trade show for veganism, and it's just groundbreaking. And I think, as I said earlier, this is something that I wouldn't have even dreamt of 20 years ago when I went vegan, even 10 years ago. And to have it here today, with quality people. Do you come to VegFest, the consumer show, as well? So you know, you can't even get to the stalls. It's absolutely 15,000 people come, and people say that VegFest has changed their lives for the better, hopefully. And but it's nice that today, you know, we've got journalists here, we've got small business owners here, we've got caterers here that hopefully are going to be inspired and, you know, look after vegans, understand veganism a bit more. And I feel very blessed to share this stage with some incredible people. Tim Barford will join us shortly, and he is Mr. VegFest, so it's his baby that's grown over the past 15, 16 years. From, you know, small, you know, fun music thing in Bristol to London Olympia. It's quite inspirational. And now we've got the Kerry McCarthy joining us. Woohoo! Thank you. And quite an inspiration, to say the least. I've seen YouTube videos of this dynamic, go-getting MP that but I'm so inspired to see vegan MPs, and you kind of know that you can trust them. That's what I feel anyway, that they're on our wavelength, they know their stuff. And I'm just going to hand over to you, Kerry. I mean, let's hear about you. Can we hear about your vegan journey as well? Are you on there? So when did you even become vegan? Let's take it back to then.
1992, January the 1st, I think. Well, a friend and I did it at the same time, and neither of us could quite remember if it was the beginning of 92 or 93, but we think it's 92. We're trying to work out where we were living at the time. So, yeah, as I like to say, so I'm a Bristol MP, and now 3 out of the 4 MPs in Bristol are vegan, and the other 2 basically went vegan because they like to say I made them, but I didn't. I just sort of showed them how it was done, and they were vegetarian already. But as I always say to them, they've both gone vegan in the last couple of years, and I say I did it when it was hard, and you've got the easy ride because it's just when you look around here, and it's almost too easy to be vegan now. So there's far too much temptation around. It used to be that it was such a struggle to find vegan things that were bad for you, and now it's really easy to find junk food, and you have to develop a bit more willpower. But yeah, so there's 5 vegan MPs. Chris Williamson has been vegan since the 70s, so he beats me, but I was in Parliament before him. Christina Rees, who chairs, there's a new all-party group set up on vegans and vegetarians. She chairs that. She's been one, I think, at least 20 years. There was Cathy Jameson, but she lost her seat, Scottish MP, was one as well. But then so at the moment it's Chris, Christina, and the 3 Bristol MPs. So we're not doing too badly. But I think the main thing now is we're obviously on the ascendancy. You know, the arguments have got through, and I always think there's a certain number of people that will see the animal welfare arguments and care enough about that to make lifestyle choices. But the environmental argument has become way more powerful in recent years. People just didn't understand that going back a while, and that is certainly leading a lot of people to at least be flexitarians, if not eventually going the whole way. And then the health arguments as well, probably at the moment doesn't get the attention it deserves, but the challenge is, and we were debating this in Parliament this week actually, at an all-party group meeting, is it's almost like the facts have been established now, particularly on the environmental side. So how do you move from establishing the facts to getting politicians to be prepared to act upon it. So you had the Paris climate change talks and agriculture was barely mentioned and the food sector was barely mentioned. I was talking to somebody who chairs an environment committee in Parliament this week, and she had no idea that if you could basically meet your Paris climate change targets if everyone stopped eating meat. That was the only thing you'd have to do. You could carry on doing everything else that you wanted. And so it partly is still about making the arguments to people and educating them. But even once people absolutely acknowledge it, if you look, say, Al Gore's new film, he's done a sequel to The Inconvenient Truth, and it's all about him at the Paris climate change talks. And I know, he's someone who's gone vegan for environmental reasons, and yet he's not champion. That wasn't what he was pushing in Paris. And it's partly that politicians don't want to do things they think might upset their constituents. But I trebled my majority at the last election, despite the Daily Mail having run all sorts of negative stories about this is the woman who wants to ban meat, although I don't. I just want people to stop eating it. So I think it's partly about that. It's partly the government doesn't like the idea of interfering in people's lives, telling people what to do. It thinks you can just put some information out there and it's up to people whether they act upon it. Whereas I think a more interventionist approach is what's needed. So I think we need to be optimistic, don't we? Because we've just come on massively from the days when you had to track down your local health food store if you wanted to buy soya milk or whatever, and now you can just walk into Sainsbury's and there's about 10 different types of things. But there's still a long way to go.
I think there's a long way to go, definitely, because really, ideally, we want a vegan planet, which would be wonderful. But the changes that you must have seen since 1992, 93, I'm trying to think, I think I was about the same time as you. I'll have to work it out, I can't think of the exact date. Some people know the day, the time that they went vegan, and it's kind of...
January the 1st, I know it was a New Year's resolution.
It's a New Year's resolution. What was it then? So let's go back to that and you. Yeah. What was it that made you on that? Were you vegetarian first?
I know the day for vegetarian, it was 18th of August 1981. I'd been vegetarian, and my sister followed me. She was 3 years younger, and then she became vegan. And she was a very self-righteous, preachy vegan. She was the classic sort of teenager in dungarees with I always say this, I'm always talking about a sort of shaved head with a little ponytail or plait down the front. So I sort of didn't really listen to her for a while, and then one day actually somehow did. And I did not know, which is very ignorant of me, but lots of people don't know. I didn't know that cows had to be pregnant to produce milk. I thought it was just something they did the way that, cats meow or whatever, And the moment I found that out, I thought, okay, you can't be vegetarian unless you're vegan, because it's just a concept, not wanting to kill animals for you so you can eat something. So I think that was a couple of weeks before Christmas, and I had a last ceremonial slice of cheesecake, and they did it. So, but it was just logically, it was just a very rational thing that I thought, all right, this is what I've got to do. And I know some people struggle with it, and so some of my colleagues or my staff members all seem to be going vegan, but they always struggle a little bit with things like cheese. But I didn't really, I just thought, it was more or less, I had to do it to be consistent, so I did it.
And I think quite like you, I struggle to wonder why people struggle. I don't know, when I coach journalists to be vegan, and I've coached some celebrities to be vegan. I would love to do more, because that's my calling, is to coach celebrities and vegans to be vegan, because then they can spread the message. And I think it's knowing your reason why you want to be vegan, and then the temptation just kind of disappears. But I mean, we all know, but maybe you guys know as well, that cheese does contain addictive substances, and that's the thing. No one's ever said to me, "Oh, I want to be I want to be a vegan, but I can't give up yogurt." It's always cheese because it's addictive. But now, I mean, you must have found, like I have, the vegan cheeses now. I mean, I just brought the lovely lady I'm working with called Natalie, she's part of my team, and she's just tried vegan cheese for the first time, and she just looked at me with astonishment and tears in her eyes and just said, I thought I was going to miss cheese, but I don't have to.
Well, Thangham, who's the MP for Bristol West, so she's part Southern Indian origin, so vegetarianism was very much, in her culture. You go someplace in Southern India and it's all pure vegetarianism actually. And I took her to VegFest in May, and she'd been she was like 95% vegan. I think the thing that meant that she had to be vegan was we got up on stage and I said, this is Thangham, she's almost vegan. And the whole audience said, you've got to do it now. So she felt like she had to. But the thing that swayed her actually, we were there to cut, I think it was Animal Equality, had this massive vegan cake to celebrate a particular anniversary. And it was like the biggest vegan cake ever. And Thangham's really into her baking. And she had a slice of this cake and she was like, wow, this is as good as the ones that I make. And she went home and experimented, and again, this is the problem because we share an office and she keeps bringing vegan cake into the office on Fridays now, which is kind of good but kind of bad as well. But it was that, but then I also dragged around the stalls and there was someone that was doing sort of soft cashew cheese. And I said, and it was almost made to look like brie, which is quite a new one, isn't it? And I said, try this. And she's like, yeah, okay, I can do this now. Yeah, the cheese and the cake are sorted, so I can do it. And with Darren, the other Bristol MP, he'd been a vegetarian quite a long time, and he was prepping. He stood for election in 2015 and didn't win. Stood again in the same seat in June and got elected. But he was prepping for a hustings, a sort of animal welfare hustings in 2015, and he asked me for some notes in case things to do with vegans or the dairy industry or whatever came up. And all I did was just say, oh, here's some links or whatever, here's something to read. And he read it, and it was like, oh, yeah, I've got to do it now. So, yeah, partly the environmental argument, I think, with Darren, but I think he also goes on about pus in milk quite a lot. It was that that kind of sort of made him a bit squeamish about it. But yeah, it's good.
Do you think that's one of your callings? You want to convert every MP one at a time to be vegan?
I wasn't trying to, but I suppose, if people show that they're vegan curious, you can give them a nudge, can't you? And what was frustrating actually is a couple of years ago there was something that was called, I think it was something to do with Gandhi, like maybe Gandhi's birthday or something like that. And they were an organisation, unbeknown to me, were trying to get MPs to go vegan for a day. And I only really knew about it after they'd done it. And so a couple of my colleagues did it. And Nick Dakin, who's a lovely man, he's MP for Scunthorpe, he sort of basically tweeted it. It was like breakfast was tea without milk, toast without butter. And it was just like, his whole day was just like really horrible food. And because he was just eating what he would have eaten, but without, so like Marmite on toast or whatever. And I just said to him, if you'd come to me, I could have sort of sorted you out for the entire day with, really nice things. And of course he struggled. He said, I didn't think this was something I could sustain. But you would if it's just like dry toast and black tea, wouldn't you?
That sounds dreadful.
So, but I think, maybe, I don't know if many MPs, there's a lot of MPs that do, is it dry January? There's a lot that give up alcohol in January, but I don't think there's any that have done Veganuary yet, so maybe that's the next thing.
Well, we need to get them. We need to get them to come to VegFest.
Yeah.
And do a Veganuary.
There's loads and loads of vegetarian MPs though, absolutely. I did try to collect names at one point, but that was a couple of parliaments ago, but including someone that could, it's more likely to be on the Labour side, but there are some Tories. There's a Tory MP that says she keeps trying to go vegan but falls off the wagon, and she's been in Parliament since 2015.
Know why you're doing it, and then you won't fall off the wagon.
But she's, give her credit though, she's a lot closer to it than most people.
So how is it generally taken with fellow MPs? Are they I know it's probably a generalisation, different MPs are going to have different opinions, but, you know, overall, are they welcoming? Are they don't get it? Are they inspired, or they just are just closing their eyes? I mean, what's the kind of feel? Is it like when you walk into a restaurant and you say, yes, I'm the vegan, and the chef sort of goes, oh no, I've got to think now, I can't use the same stuff. You know, is it kind of generally a good feeling, or not so good?
I don't know, I suspect, I mean, a lot of them will be too polite to say anything, won't they? But they probably think that I'm a bit, they either think it's a bit silly, or it just means you're a bit. There's a sort of phrase they do say, well, that's just typical Bristol, is that people in Bristol are like that. I'm actually from Luton, and Luton isn't like that, but it's almost like a sort of, it veers from like tolerated eccentricity to people. I think probably there's people that think that you're terrible. You know, there's that whole image of vegans as being very preachy and self-righteous and always talking about it, and I don't actually do it, but I think you almost feel like the moment you mention it. So I'm on something called the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. I've been on that since January, but I need to have to go to Strasbourg a few times a year. And Strasbourg is like, well, it's like France, you know, they hate vegetarians, they hate vegans. But there's a whole delegation of MPs that go out, and in the evening they all go out for meals, and there's alcohol consumed, and I don't really drink either. And that sort of situation where it's almost, you either end up going out with them and you're literally sitting there with some French fries while they're all having veal and things, or I've now found there's a vegan burger bar in Strasbourg that's just open, so I would much rather go and sit by myself and eat a vegan burger than sort of have to be that person that isn't joining in things. And the socialist group there, which is socialists from 47 countries, have a big dinner on the Monday, and my office got in touch and said, can you cater for vegans? And they said, it's meat or fish, and fish was the vegetarian option. So it's like, it's okay, I don't want to go to it anyway, I'll go to my vegan burger bar. But I think that probably the people on that delegation think I'm either a bit of a pain, or, you know, no fun, or, you know, always going on about being vegan, because if they say, you coming to the dinner tonight, I'll say, well, no, I can't, because there's nothing I can eat. The fact you're saying that makes you sound a bit whingy. I don't know. There are some that, I think there's some that sort of say, oh, she's very principled, but I'm not sure whether that's a compliment or just another way of saying self-righteous and preachy and that. So Ken Clark described me as very principled once. So, but that was when I got made Shadow Environment Secretary, the Daily Mail went to town on the fact I was a vegan. And it came up on Question Time. It also came up apparently on Mock the Week and Have I Got News for You and all sorts of things that I didn't see. But when Ken Clark was asked about it, he said, well, she's a very principled person, but people should be allowed to eat what they like, which was kind of what I'd said anyway.
How do you deal with things like that, being in the public persona, you know, and you know, things are written about you and about your vegan principles? Is it hard sometimes or do you just like have to just get on with it because you know you are the MP?
It's pretty grim. In the there were a Daily Mail reporter actually doorstepped my mum, who lives by herself in a little village, and he said he was just walking his dog past her house, which is at the end of a cul-de-sac, and she ended up inviting him in and showing him all like my school photos and things like that.
Did she know he was a journalist, or did he just pretend to be a
No,
random...
well, he said he was a journalist, but who happened to be walking his dog in.
That's naughty.
And they did sort of, they ran lots of things, like they looked at past blog posts, and at Christmas it was the MP who hates Christmas, just because I'd once said online that I didn't like mince pies, which I don't. And, and that was actually, it was quite unpleasant, but at the same time, a few days after they were running a post having a go at me for saying that people ought to be warned that meat wasn't very good for your health, they were running all these reports saying, if you eat bacon, it will give you bowel cancer. So it's a real sort of double standard. So in the end, I came to the conclusion that me being higher profile, although it was a bit painful, it was actually helping get those arguments out there. Because there was it was a lot of good feedback. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, it was him who made me Shadow Environment, and he said to me that he'd had far more positive emails about my appointment than he'd had bad ones. And I said, well, that's because you live in Islington, Jeremy, so it might be slightly different in other places. But generally speaking, I think sometimes you have to stick your head above the parapet and you might be the one that gets shot at, but it's like the first MP to out themselves as gay. It must have been really different. And that was Chris Smith in, I think, the 1984 or something, you know, and now, God, there's got to be about 40 or 50 out politicians, but he must have had a terrible time back then from some quarters, and now nobody really cares, do they? So it was a bit that way. So I don't know if people have got questions.
Yeah, lovely. Do you have some questions? Do you want to come and take the mic? Or Tim, do you want to give the mic? Oh yeah, we've got our lovely lady there. Sorry, I didn't see you. She's having a little breather. She's been fantastic all day.
It was just in relation to what you said earlier. You said the parliamentary stance is kind of to provide the information and let people decide what they're going to do rather than impose anything. But from what I gather, I mean, obviously as vegans, people are aware of how damaging the meat industry things are for the environment, etc., etc. But speaking with people who aren't, I get the impression that they don't know this information at all. Like, people are often so shocked when I tell them. And so I was wondering, can you see it being kind of more urgently addressed, or the information being kind of more widely distributed? Or do you think it's not in the interests of whoever to make that known?
Well, there are obviously lobbies against some of this. You know, the meat industry or the dairy industry will be pushing back a bit. The problem is you can end up feeling that you're getting somewhere. There's an all-party group on vegetarians and vegans that had a meeting this week about the environmental impact of livestock farming, and there was like standing room only in one of the biggest committee rooms in the Commons, and it was a really, really good meeting, went on for 2 hours. But then I don't know how many people in that room weren't already completely up to speed with the arguments, you know, and there have been so many reports that have come out, so from Chatham House, the UN, New Economics Foundation's just done a really good one for the Vegan Society. But yeah, is it just circulated within the same sort of bubble? I think if you break it down into sort of, the Vegan Society had posters at bus stops recently, didn't they? So I think some of those things do start getting through, and it's definitely reached a bigger audience than it had done. So incrementally you're getting there, but whether the government ought to do more, yes they should, and whether they should lead public opinion or follow public opinion is always the argument, and they could actually lead public opinion by being far more vocal about it. But there's this collective failure of will. Like I said, you know, the Paris climate change talks, the Clean Growth Plan the government just put out a week or two ago. There's one mention of agriculture in there. There's no focus on the food sector. I think the food sector is responsible for 25% of emissions. Livestock's responsible for 15% of global greenhouse gases. God, it's got to be in there, hasn't it? You know, trying to make farming more sustainable. So that's really just me describing the problem, isn't it? I think things like I've got these little post-it notes in my office with facts like. If you skipped meat for one meal, that's the equivalent of boiling a kettle 388 times, I think. That's how much energy it would save. And I think there's another one about if you had one meat-free day a week, it's the equivalent. If everyone in the UK had one meat-free day a week, it'd be the equivalent to taking 250,000 cars off the road. So things like that, you know, it's... although I need to check that one because I don't know whether it's equivalent to taking it off permanently or just for the same that one day. But those sort of facts are pretty powerful. We were talking, so Tom at the back, who's a GP, we were talking about the health case and how you've got the government's Eat Well plate, which is now much better than it was, and that's basically setting out the nutritional guidelines and what proportion of your diet should be vegetables, or you know where you get your protein from. and that is massively improved on the previous one, and globally a lot of countries have got massively improved versions. But unless you actually then use that as a guide, and I think you were saying that in Ireland they have to follow the version there. So if you're like the NHS in Ireland, you're meant to provide food in accordance with their equivalent of the Eat Well plate. Well, our NHS here clearly doesn't do that. So maybe through public procurement and trying to put pressure on those institutions, so NHS, prisons, schools, anywhere where there's mass catering, might be a way to make those. That's more the health argument, obviously, than the environment. But I think also, the chains like, Pret and Wagamama's and all those that are, to an extent, jumping on the bandwagon because there's a market there. But if they can link it not just to meeting consumer demand, but also making the arguments at the same time and talking about why they think it's a good move, as opposed to just means that they can sell more food. I think that's all going to have a bit of an impact.
I'm also a GP, but and it's kind of on the health side. I'm not seeing that through from the trying to focus on how it needs to be more plant-based, for the health reasons, for the antibiotic resistance. Is that brought up in Parliament at all? Because I know there's a lot of stuff I've seen around antibiotic resistance generally, and how there need to be better prescribers and don't get your GPs to, don't ask them for antibiotics all the time. But I don't even think the general public realise some of the stuff about the antibiotics in there, and the government aren't saying, reduce meat for that reason either, because you're seeing more and more antibiotic resistance all the time, and people are dying. So, that sounds really dramatic, but when I was, before I finished my GP training, there were people where there were resistant infections who were dying from the medical report, and they about 3, 4, 5 antibiotics, nothing was working.
So in case you couldn't hear, you was asked about antibiotics and the impact on human health of the sort of routine prescribing of antibiotics in the animal food chain is one of the big issues. So there are a few MPs there's two MPs that are looking at it from the animal point of view, and that's me and Zach Goldsmith. And there are some others that are looking at it more generally from the health perspective. I think George Osborne at one point, when he was Chancellor, made a big speech in America about it, which was sort of stepping outside his turf. But so I think the health side, I've got a niece with cystic fibrosis who fortunately is pretty healthy at the moment, but the treatment, if she has to go on the intravenous, trying to remember this, if she's got to have that treatment like several times a year, and antibiotics lose their effectiveness, that's her, really struggling. So organisations like the Cystic Fibrosis Trust have been campaigning on it. I ask lots of questions, and the government always tries to put a good gloss on it, but if you look at what's happened in the Netherlands, for example, in their routine use of antibiotics in pigs, it's dropped quite dramatically. In Denmark, I think. I met with the British Poultry Council this week, and they said they've stopped pretty much. There's no routine prescription in chickens, but the use in response to outbreaks of illness has gone down quite dramatically as well. So there are some moves, but it's not whether it's enough to actually deal with the problem. Because you'll reduce the scale of the problem is such that even if you start making inroads into the use of that, you've still got an awful lot of resistance that's out there. But it's one of those issues that comes and goes. There'll be a report and it makes the front page of the papers, and it might be talked about within the Health Select Committee for a moment, and then it drops off the agenda a bit. So it's kind of important that every now and again we table questions to try and keep it up there. So, yeah.
I know you're saying that the government might put information out there and hope that people are going to take notice or whatever, but I'd say obviously you're saying stuff is being tackled slightly within the industry, but from a public health point of view, nobody's saying, big government figures aren't saying if people reduce the amount of meat they eat, then if they are going to eat meat, in theory there should be fewer people on, and therefore less need for the antibiotics and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I see your point. They're not
not saying
they're not following it on from that, are they? Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think people feel. I don't think the information is out there for people unless they're looking for it. That if they reduce their meat consumption, and it's going to benefit their health in other ways as well.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things we're saying is it's not just about that doctors aren't taught about nutrition in the way they should be, or they certainly don't prescribe nutritious diets in the way that they should do, unless somebody goes to them with, if they've got type 2 diabetes, you then talk about how you change your diet. If someone goes to them and they're clinically obese, you might talk about diet, but you don't talk about it in a more proactive way. Yeah. And you save the NHS a huge amount of money. £1 in every 10 spent in the NHS is on diabetes-related illnesses. So, yeah, you could save. Yeah.
I mean, people come to me and I'll try and talk about nutrition, but with 10 minutes it's always quite hard. And also, I find as a GP, I'm told a lot of my patients are told to eat stuff like there's the Cambridge milk diet. I don't know if you've heard about it, but in the obesity clinic, they're told 6 pints of fat milk a day or whatever. And somebody had this. Oh, sorry. The Cambridge milk diet, where they prescribe basically just milk as a weight loss aid and stuff. And then I've had a patient who was on that, didn't feel so good on that, understandably. And then she was put on calorie control things by the obesity clinic, and it was like cornflakes with milk, ham sandwich, and a small. It was all calorie controlled, and then that's what's being advocated within parts of the NHS. Although it doesn't, that's not what the EUL page says anyway. But I mean, it's just
Yeah, I think that's, the Atkins diet in particular was so meat protein heavy, wasn't it? And a lot of people went down that path. I always remember it was about a week after one of the, I think it was the WHO report about the link between bowel cancer and processed food. And the bowel cancer charity had a big reception in Parliament in the Speaker's House. And the buffet was ham sandwiches with white sliced bread, so like no fibre and bread. And it was like, if even the bowel cancer charity can't send out the right message, then, what hope is there really? So maybe the cancer charities ought to be speaking out more, because there's been some interesting. So Thangam, I said, who's the Bristol West MP, she was diagnosed with, she won her seat in 2015 and was diagnosed with breast cancer about 3 weeks later, and went through a year of chemo and that's one of the reasons why she looked into how she could try to prevent make herself healthy in future, and that's one of the other reasons why she sort of cut down on dairy, and eventually she cut out milk straight away, and then like I said, the cheese bit came a bit later. But the cancer charities don't really speak out about those issues, and I think the scientific evidence is quite compelling now. It's definitely on processed meats.
I just want to ask if you think that, obviously yourself and other leaders in the country could do more to actually promote the benefits of becoming plant-based or vegan, because if you're looking at America, obviously they have a lot of leaders on the forefront that's sort of promoting this. There's a lot of athletes and celebrities and things like that, because I just don't feel that the information for the general public is there, that even if in media and things like that, it's just not there for people to read and to see for themselves, because I think if not scaremongering as such, but sometimes you do have to shake people to realize that there is their own responsibility to change the way we live in order to actually have a sustainable life and a sustainable planet. Do you think we need to do more, or leaders need to do more?
Yeah, no, I think in healthy eating across the board, there's one is partly making sure the information's out there, but then you have to go beyond that to make it easier for people as well. And part of that is market-led, but if you, I've set up a pilot in Bristol called Feed in Bristol, and it's part of there's an overarching thing called Feed in Britain. And it's partly about food poverty, so it's food banks, it's surplus food, so food that would otherwise go to landfill that gets used to feed people that need it. So a lot of stuff in food poverty, but it's also trying to make sure that everyone has access to healthy food. And in Bristol, what is ironic is in the wealthiest ward in the city, there's a massive waiting list for allotments. And if you go out to the poorer areas, there's allotments that haven't been dug up for years and years. So it's that lifestyle thing. It's people who want to be organic and they go to their artisan butchers or whatever and have a certain lifestyle against people out on the estates that just can't afford to do it, or it's the last thing on their mind. You know, they're just trying to grab something that it's about food having calories rather than nutrition. And I think there's an awful lot that we could do on that front. So maybe you don't present it, and again we were talking about this earlier, you don't present it as a vegan thing, but if you've got a programme that is all about how people should eat more pulses and more vegetables and more fruit, then by default you're getting them away from at least the unhealthier end of the meat market. But I think, I think progress has been made. What worries me a bit is vegan has become so trendy now, hasn't it? It's like such a fashionable thing, and it's leapfrog vegetarianism. So you see everywhere you go, there's places where they will say like vegan friendly and things like that, and we do vegan stuff. And that's great if it gets it out there, but you do need quite authoritative figures as well. So in the States, you've got Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and Al Gore and really sort of serious people that are talking about it. And someone told me that they said the Obamas were pretty much 95% plant-based or whatever, and they were hoping that once they left office they'd speak out. And we don't really have that to the same extent here. But with people like Beyonce and Jay-Z going vegan for a while, that's, on the one hand you could say, well, that's a bit trendy or whatever, it's but if that gets young people involved, then it doesn't matter if they haven't read the UN's report and they can't quote the statistics. It's still good. But I think we do need more of a steer. But I don't know, other than getting a few more of my colleagues to speak out about it. And I ask questions quite a lot. But I'm trying to get the government to act on. There's a whole range of environmental things as well. Where the government, so we've got an inquiry at the moment on this committee I sit on into disposable packaging, so coffee cups that aren't 1% of the coffee cups, so 7 million coffee cups disposable coffee cups used each day in Britain, and 1% is recycled. Plastic bottles as well, massive number of them just go to landfill or end up in the ocean. I forgot about that. No, I'm here Sunday, there's the environmental thing. I can't make it tomorrow because it's my sister's birthday, but I suppose we have to be the opinion leaders, don't we? In terms and do it in a way that doesn't alienate people, and do it in a way that educates them and makes them realise that actually it's something that they could perhaps do, and get them there gently. And the more the public, if you look at again, the LGBT rights issue is a good example, because it needed some people to put their head above the parapet and come out and say things, and politicians to be brave. But it was also gradually public opinion got to the place where, for a Conservative government to say we're introducing equal marriage didn't sort of scare the horses too much. There were obviously some people that weren't happy with it, but it was a mixture. It was a mixture of the government, so there was things like lowering the age of consent and then introducing civil partnerships and gradually getting there. But it was also, I grew up at a time when Freddie Mercury and Elton John wouldn't admit they were gay, which just seems like totally ridiculous now. And I don't think Liberace would admit he was gay. You're probably all too young to remember Liberace, but he was like the campest person ever, but wouldn't admit he was gay. Whereas now it's, most people you would like to think will feel fairly comfortable coming out. And I think there are parallels, because it was a mixture of government being brave, individuals being brave, but also the public going along with it and sometimes being ahead of the curve. I think the public was ready for it, and hopefully we'll get there.